The first story of the day is about big tech censorship. It rolls on, and we have to have this conversation. We need to find a common ground, and we need to figure out what we're going to do in the face of this, because it's only going to get worse. And today, one of my favorite leftists that I heavily disagree with on a lot of topics, Caitlyn Johnstone. I compliment her a lot. I argue with her sometimes on Twitter because I don't agree with her. But overall, I think she does some really great journalism. She's very, very aggressive. She curses all the time, I will say. Caitlyn Johnstone's always cursing and screaming at anybody. But to be honest, I love it. I think it's hilarious, and I think she's a very important person, a very important journalist, one of the most eye-catching journalists to me. You know, this last year, I consider her one of the most breakout journalists in the United States, or in the world. I think she might actually be in Australia, to be honest. But she talks about, she's like a super socialist anarchist, which I don't agree with that policy, but her foreign policy and her criticism of, you know, our foreign policy, and her criticism of the mainstream media, and her criticism of the Russiagate hysteria, red wave, or red scare, crazy, everybody's Russian, Trump worked with Russia even though we have no proof, we have to retract 15 stories because we lied about it. Her journalism on that stuff has been very, very brilliant. So for that, you know, I think Caitlyn Johnstone is very, very important. And she was banned off Twitter today, suspended, her account completely taken down. I don't know exactly the reason. The most reasons that I've heard, I can't confirm completely, but it's because she said something to John McCain, and I guess, you know, Twitter didn't like that because, you know, gotta protect John McCain. It's not like he started wars or anything. It's not like he's flying over to Syria to try to rally the rebel troops to take down the Syrian government. That didn't happen, so, you know, he needs a lot of protection from Twitter. But on that note, I find something very, very odd about just Twitter's censorship, because like I said, I'm going to keep it real. Caitlyn Johnstone curses a lot, and I warned people, not just Caitlyn Johnstone, but I warned conservatives and everybody, watch what you say, because if you're telling the truth, if you're being very honest a lot of time like Caitlyn Johnstone, if you're telling the truth like Alex Jones does sometimes, and it's so loud, they're like cleaning something. If you're telling these truths that they don't want you to tell, they're looking for a reason to kick you off these platforms. So when it comes to Caitlyn Johnstone, the fact that she curses all the time doesn't help with the fact that they're trying to censor her. I don't know what they're doing. Sorry, they're like cleaning carpets or just like vacuuming. I don't know how long it's gonna last, but in general, just watch what you say because they're trying to take you down. But with Caitlyn, she curses all the time. She yells at people. Sarah Jeong of the New York Times, she just got verified on Twitter. She said white people are effing groveling goblins and they need to go underground. Like some really racist, terrible, hateful, negative stuff where she curses. And I just find it very odd that she can curse and act like Caitlyn Johnstone, but actually be racist. Like, here's the difference with Caitlyn Johnstone and Alex Jones that people don't understand. Caitlyn Johnstone and Alex Jones, they're the first ones to go because they're very aggressive. But in my personal perspective, you can have your own perspective. Alex Jones and Caitlyn Johnstone are aggressive in the right direction. What they say might be off-putting, but who they're actually going against, in my personal perspective, is who needs to be opposed. So they're allowed to do, they can't do that, and if Caitlyn Johnstone or Alex Jones like yells at the wrong people, they get suspended off Twitter. But if Sarah Jeong just has a blanket statement, it's not like she's attacking any sort of power structure, or she's keeping it super real like Caitlyn or Alex. She's just hating on all white people and calling them groveling goblins and cursing hysterically at them, saying that they need to be basically exterminated from the planet. And she gets verified on Twitter and gets a job at the New York Times. I mean, you can't make this stuff up, folks. The Twitter censorship is very, very real. And I'll tell you something that I know a lot of people don't want to hear, but I really don't care. They're going after people who threaten the mainstream narrative. It's not about left and right when it comes to who they don't want to speak. They don't want Caitlyn Johnstone to speak. They don't want Jimmy Dore to speak. They don't want people like Kyle Kulinski to speak. They don't want Julian Assange to speak. It's not because they're leftist. It's because they say things that they don't want them to say. And whether you turn on Jimmy Kimmel, or you turn on Stephen Colbert, or you turn on MSNBC, or you turn on CNN, or you turn on basically every single television station except for Fox News, You have one singular narrative. It's not even a left-wing narrative where they're like world peace and, no wars. That used to be left-wing. Now it's like war with Syria, Russia, Russia, Russia. We hate Trump. And if you stray from that, like Caitlyn Johnstone will be like, yeah, but like, I don't agree with Syria. And they'll be like, whoa, we got to kick you off of Twitter. Julian Assange, clearly he's a huge threat to a lot of people because he's, like number one agent of like releasing information. But be very, very cautious, I have to say, to everybody, because it's really not about left and right in that sense. They want a singular narrative, and they lost to Donald Trump, and they didn't want to lose to Donald Trump. So instead of listening to people, instead of listening to me and being like, oh, Anomaly's right, this is how we could win elections if we actually were likable and we didn't pander and we talked to American citizens and stopped prioritizing foreigners over the literal citizens of our country. They don't listen. Their twisted ideology is, and I'm trying not to be too mean because I know they're going to try to demonetize this on YouTube for no reason. They probably will. They don't want people to think any other way than how they want them to think. And it is the number one threat in my personal perspective as far as systemically destroying the United States is the media and the social media fascistic monopoly that they are trying to carve. And everybody knows it. Caitlyn Johnstone knows it. Jimmy Dore knows it. I know it. Left-wing people know it. Right-wing people know it. They want one single narrative. They don't want me to be here telling you this. They don't want Caitlyn Johnstone to be there telling you this. They want everybody to believe the same thing. And that's what fascistic totalitarian regimes do. Donald Trump doesn't want that. Donald Trump's trying to stop that. He realizes that 90% of the press is saying the exact same stuff. And if they get to 100%, we don't have democracy or freedom. We have a communistic, fascistic, totalitarian society that there is no free thought, freedom of speech, Second Amendment, any amendment that people actually like. So be very, very, very careful with what eggs you put in what baskets. And I say this because, I know people don't want to hear this. Like I said, I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you what you need to hear. And people like, this is specifically tailored for, I tell conservatives, stop cursing and screaming because they're going to try to kick you off because they already don't want you to be there. But this is for the progressive socialists and left-wing people who like and appreciate and at least consider me. Listen to what I'm saying right now, because I know this is not what you want to hear, but it's what you have to hear. Socialists like Caitlyn Johnstone and Jimmy Dore, they want universal health care and free education, and that's their almost number one priority. They're like, we want universal health care, education. They say it every single day. They say it all the time. That's their number one priority. These people, these social media companies, and this fascistic movement that's going on to literally control the entire narrative, they're eventually going to give you universal health care, and they're eventually going to give you free college and free education. And it's up to you to be intelligent enough to realize that those two things are not the two most important things to a free, happy, and successful society, because they're going to give that to you. Universal health care, the reason that they don't like Jimmy Dore and Caitlyn Johnstone, the reason that she's getting kicked off Twitter, is not because they're socialists. They love socialism. They're not mad at Jimmy Dore or Caitlyn Johnstone for proposing universal health care. Why do you think Kamala Harris is proposing universal health care? Because that doesn't hurt the fascistic regime, that helps it. Universal health care is a dream for them. They get to control the entire health industry even more than they do now. You put the entire health industry into singular government hands and then tax the people, steal money from people and small businesses and give it to the federal government. They love that. So eventually they're going to pander to progressives. They're already starting to do it. I called this 2 years ago and nobody wanted to listen. But eventually, Democratic politicians who are in with Google, Facebook, Twitter, and who want to control the entire narrative and make like a one singular direction, communist-style type government, they're going to give you universal health care. And the very foolish progressives, the very naive progressives are going to cheer and act like it's a big win. And then they're going to give you free education because, well, this is great. I mean, government-run education, that's what Germany does. Free college. But do you know what else you can't do in Germany? You can't homeschool your kids. It's illegal. Google it. It's illegal to homeschool your kids. So if you try to teach your kids outside the government in Germany, You get your kids stolen from you, you get fined, or who knows what happens, but you can't do it. You can't say certain things in Germany, or it's considered questioning history or hate speech. And I'm not saying that you should question certain things, but to be honest, I mean, you should be allowed to say whatever you want and question anything you want. Questions are okay. You can't do that in Germany. So they're going to give you free healthcare. They're going to give you free education because it's not a threat to this fascistic totalitarian regime that they are trying to construct. And my question to the Jimmy Dores and the Caitlyn Johnstones and the progressive socialists who are going to get censored, not because they care about free education and universal health care, but because they're anti-war, they're anti-regime change war, and they're anti-mainstream media narrative. That's why you're a threat, not because of your socialistic ideas. Jimmy Dore is a threat to the establishment because he'll debunk the DNC server, and he'll debunk, Russiagate, and he'll debunk mainstream media narratives, and he'll question the Democrats. Why do you think Caitlyn Johnstone got taken down? It's not because she wants universal health care. Universal health care is a drool fest for these people. Oh, whoa. So on that note, I just want to say to progressive socialists like Caitlyn Johnstone and Jimmy Dore, as I've said for years, and nobody wants to listen to me. I go on their shows, and everybody there hates me because I don't like universal health care. But I'm going to tell you this, and what I'm about to say, like fine wine, is going to age well. They're going to give you these things, and it's up to you to figure out what's actually most important. Because if you go for the universal health care and free education when they dangle it in front of you and you think that you change their minds, it's a big win. It's not going to stop this fascistic regime that they are looking to create. It's going to aid it. And I really don't like when everybody compares everything to Hitler. I think it's ridiculous. But if you really do look at the Nazi regime, and I'm not saying it doesn't have right-wing qualities, I'm not going to be unfair, they had environmental things, they had universal health care, they had, a totalitarian media. So if you really want to replicate what Mussolini and Hitler did in a totalitarian fascistic way, universal health care is in no way, shape, or form a threat to what they're doing. It's literally an assistance to what they're doing because you're taking the entire health industry that's already corrupt, it's already messed up, it's already terrible. I'm not saying it's good, it's a complete joke in the United States now, but you're taking it all, you're putting it into the hands of the federal government that you always complain about. You're making government bigger. You're increasing taxes. No, not just on the rich. You're increasing taxes on small businesses. You're increasing taxes on everybody. You're forcing them into a mandatory health system and placing that trust and that faith and that power into the hands of the federal government. So this is my final warning to Caitlyn Johnstone, Jimmy Dore, Kyle Kulinski, and progressive socialists that I actually do respect and appreciate because they do have some honest skews to their narratives. That's why I watch them. It's no coincidence that Caitlyn Johnstone was taken down today. It's not because she's left-wing. It's not because she's socialist. It's not because she likes universal health care. It's not because she likes free education. All those things are a drool fest for these Democrat people that you don't like, that you claim that you're fighting. They will give you that in a heartbeat. Kamala Harris is starting to talk about it. Elizabeth Warren will talk about it. In 2 years, you'll have every single Democrat calling for universal health care and free education. Because in no way, shape, or form is that a threat to a fascistic regime. That is an assistance to a fascistic regime. And make no mistake, this technocracy, tech censorship, this complete monolithic style control of the media is coming from the left wing. It's going to move further left. They're trying to swallow everything up. Your best friend right now is a libertarian or a conservative who is trying to take that power away from these corporations and from federal government and to give it back to the other side. Because if you elect a left-wing president, whether it be a far left-wing person like Bernie Sanders or Ocasio-Cortez, or a moderately left-wing warmonger president like, you know the drill, name pretty much any Democrat, you now have an entire media system. They're trying to take down Fox News. Now you have an entire television that's nearly 100% left-wing. And not real left-wing. I'm talking fascism disguised in liberalism. Now you have an entire technocracy, social media websites that are all being run by the left wing. Jack is left wing. Zuckerberg's entire staff is left-wing. Google literally worked with Hillary Clinton's campaign. Eric Schmidt, CEO, who stepped down recently, had a staff badge on his neck. They own YouTube. You have 100% totalitarian left-wing regime. The only thing right now, the only thing saving you, Caitlyn Johnstone, the only thing saving you, Jimmy Dore, the only thing saving you, Kyle Kalinske, the only thing saving you right now, progressive socialist, is the fact that Donald J. Trump is in the White House, is the fact that there are hundreds of millions of people that are outside of this system and now flocking to the right wing to try to save your life. That is the only thing standing in the way from you having a voice or you being ripped out of existence completely. So it's up to you. And this is metaphorically. I'm not talking literally, because now you can't even make a joke anymore and they'll try to take my channel down. But metaphorically, if I see somebody digging a grave and I know that that grave that they're digging is going to be used to put their own body in 3 years, metaphorically, I'm going to say something. That's why I'm saying something now, and that's why I've been saying something for 2 years to Caitlyn Johnstone, Kyle Kalinske, Jimmy Dore, and all of these progressive socialists that have huge audiences. You're digging, metaphorically, I have to say it 50 million times so it doesn't get taken out of context. You're metaphorically digging your own grave because you want a left-wing, fascistic-style technocracy and, wannabe government, shadow government that's trying to overthrow the Trump administration. You're trying to push them further left. You're trying to give them more control of education. You're trying to give them more indoctrination of people, that's funded by the taxpayers. And you're trying to put the entire health industry in a singular communistic way into the hands of the federal government. Universal health care, whether you agree with it, you think it's great, or you think it's terrible, it's communist health care. It's socialist communist health care. It's stealing money from healthy people. It's stealing money from families. It's a mandatory tax on the entire population of the United States and then redistributing it. It's communist healthcare. It's not universal healthcare. It's not coming from aliens from a different universe. It's not universal. It's communist healthcare. And I'm just being honest, even if you think it's 100% a great idea, which you're allowed to do, it's not universal. It's not coming from the universe. It's communist. It's coming from my money. It's coming from small businesses' money. It's coming from everybody, similar to Obamacare. It's a mandatory tax that you can't evade. With Trump, regardless of what you think of healthcare, you don't have to pay it. If you don't buy healthcare, that's fine. Under Obamacare, if you didn't buy into the healthcare that was raising every year and literally didn't work, I had it for 4 years and it stole $10,000 from me. Literally, that's all it did. It saved me $10,000. So whether you agree with it or not, there's a mandatory tax if you didn't pay Obamacare. It was a scam, just like communist healthcare is a scam. And I don't want to even talk about healthcare right now because I'm trying to stand up for Caitlyn Johnstone, but this is my final warning for progressive socialists. Be very, very cautious on following a leader just because they agree with socialism. Because now you have transgender Vermont, which is fine. God bless all transgender people. But transgender Vermont mayor or whatever, she's running as a Democrat. She won the primaries. She doesn't even know what socialism is, but she's pushing socialism. You'll have Kamala Harris. You'll have the Democrats. You'll have the same people trying to start the wars in Syria that you fight and claim to care so much about. They're going to dangle this carrot in front of your face and say, look, now we like universal health care. Now we like free education. In no way, shape, or form is universal health care or free education, which is not free, it's going to be taxpayer. It's not going to come from the Federal Reserve, and it's certainly not going to come from Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates. They will dangle this carrot in front of your face, and it's going to be up to you to be smart enough to realize that that's not the be-all, end-all, because all of those things aid a fascistic or communistic government. That's what they want. It's not, oh, we're such revolutionaries because we want universal health care. No, that's what communist and fascistic governments historically have used, because it's not a threat. It's taking a free market system, which now is not a free market. It's completely run by the pharmacy, and it's corrupt in the United States. I'm not saying it's a free market. We need to get back to that point. But you're taking options and you're throwing it in one basket and giving it to the hands of the federal government. And I'm tired of people digging their own graves metaphorically. So if you want to be censored off the internet, if you want to be deleted like Caitlyn Johnstone, if you want to act all surprised when you're next, Alex Jones, Caitlyn Johnstone, Jimmy Dore, Kyle Kalinske, Anomaly, everybody, just don't act surprised if you're going to metaphorically dig your own grave. That's all I'm going to say, because the only thing standing in the way of you having a voice, you having freedom to speak your mind about your terrible policies and tell the truth about, you know, Russiagate, and tell the truth about the wars in the Middle East like they do. That's why I like them. The only thing standing in their way is Donald Trump and conservatives. If you take the feet out from under Donald Trump and conservatives, you are ending your own career quite literally. On that note, I'm going to go to the next, and I mean that as a friend. Like I said, I'm not going to tell you things that you want to hear. I'm going to tell you what you need to hear, because it's past the point. Maybe they're going to do this. I know that they just did it to a left-wing progressive. They did it to right-wing people, and they're not going to stop because it's in their terms and conditions. You read the terms and conditions of Google, and it's very, very broad. They've given themselves the power, similar to what people say in the Patriot Act. You know, oh, well, if they're terrorists, we can tap their phone. They've given themselves a broad set of rules that says if you discriminate or hate speech, or if you say something about race, religion, and gender, even if it's comedy, then it's still considered hate speech. And if you talk about the weather or worldly events, or you talk about politics, or you talk about this, or you talk about basically anything that there is to possibly even talk about, you can't possibly form a sentence without possibly maybe considering one of these things. They've given themselves complete power to shut down anybody they want. And it's literally in front of your face. They put it up there a year ago, and now they're starting to act on it. Be very, very cautious. I am your friend, saying the blunt things that you don't want to hear, like President Donald J. Trump.